Hello everybody. I decided today that I will be doing another video really to add to the amount of content that I have covering Charlie, A.K.A. MoistCr1tikal or Penguin Zero on YouTube. The reason for this is mostly because I hadn't really been able to go over all of the um, kind of content that I would like to go over, which is basically delivering a video about how it might be possible to go and make, you know, a really good method of being a content creator through looking at Charlie's work, his content. Um, Now that's actually maybe sounds a little bit um, simplistic because it's really executive functioning that is in social communication. Like they sound like two very basic things, but for people such as myself who have, you know, issues in executive functioning and also communication, social communication disorder, it's a lot more difficult to really understand that. And for us, um, well, I shouldn't say for us because everybody, might have a different story about their particular issues in communication. But for me, it's really kind of important to kind of think a bit rationally about how to go about doing those kinds of things. If you or I in particular wanted to be a content creator. So I mean, there's really two parts of this that I want to do. The first part today that I want to do is really about his about MoistCr1tikal's streaming content, which is on Twitch TV. If you aren't watching this and you don't know what that is, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Streaming is definitely not something for everybody. Um, as a viewer or as a content creator, it really depends on what interests you um, in either direction. And so I guess you could call streaming a bit of a more relaxed form of entertainment for people who want to be able to enjoy content, after work hours, before bedtime, or like during a break or something. It's kind of similar a bit to how a podcast would go, except podcasts are all recorded beforehand before they're published. It's not live or anything like that, and there's also usually no video to it as well. So streaming is definitely a very interesting thing that's growing over these recent years, especially. Charlie didn't even start streaming until I'm not really entirely sure of the year, but at least mid or like after the mid 2010s. Um, so it really basically this is new, not just to perhaps you guys, but also to Charlie as well. He's not really um, at least on Twitch anyway. I'm sure he had streaming content like before that, but um, this would have been a different service or a different platform. I'm not really here to discuss that. Um, what is really important is the methods in which he goes and makes these videos. And so and by videos here I mean streaming videos, of course. Um, the first important thing I think should probably be mentioned is there's no real like scheduled time. Like it's really rough when Charlie decides to go ahead and stream. Usually it is during the night and in Eastern time because he's in Florida, but that isn't always the case. It could be during the middle of the day. Um, it could also be during a scheduled event like Moist Esports team is playing on Apex Legends or something like that. Then it would be a lot more scheduled than usual. But even then, um, it, it it doesn't really revolve around the specific times that as a content creator he wants to go out and make an influence to the community. um, that is left completely up to him for the most part, like I said, aside from anything that can't really be negotiated. Charlie will really negotiate that with himself and put his personal, you know, tasks and hobbies and anything that might even be part of his content creation work would be put in front of streaming. So, and that's really kind of a you know thing that really applies to Charlie specifically. In this case, it might not be that way for other people. Um, there's definitely many different ways to go about doing it, but here, I feel a bit closer to Charlie's method because it's really catering to a lot of audiences that you know don't really want to be on stream at like 6 o'clock every night. It's really about basically you're on Twitch and you're looking at other content, and then Charlie goes on and you go and check it out. It's really basically just a spur of the moment thing that Charlie really lends to that kind of mentality there. As a matter of fact, there's also a lot of people that just end up being there before the stream even really gets, you know, sent as a pop-up or anything like that. Um, Oftentimes, it's really just a handful of people, mostly people such as myself, who end up having the tabs open all the time. And then, you end up hearing Charlie's voice randomly while you're off doing, you know, other work or um, for in my case, if I'm like playing video games or something, then I'll hear Charlie come on, and then I'll do that. There's definitely a lot of interesting facets to that strategy that really don't really lend itself in favor of other strategies per se, like for instance 24-hour streaming or marathon streaming. um, those things don't really lend itself to that idea as well, because a lot of the um, behavioral parts of like the viewers is about when Charlie goes live, and so that's really something that can go very well in favor of that spontaneousness. Really, the even his most scheduled things that I mentioned before um, really don't always get really like well, I guess I shouldn't say mentioned beforehand, because I could be wrong about that. It could be that he does mention some of those scheduled things, especially for more esports. It's just that for the sake of my perspective here, I don't go on Twitter or anything, so I don't check Twitter for anything at all, really, honestly. Um, the only time I ever go on Twitter is basically if I'm forced to, in like some related content or whatever. Um, it's really something that doesn't come in mind, and I'm not really that heavily focused on it anyway. And my method of getting in touch with Charlie's times of stream, um, with leaving my tabs open. So I mean, it's really up to you if you're gonna go and do that. Especially because it's possible, like I said, that Charlie doesn't even do that, and it might just be pointless. So, um, I mean, it's really nice though that being able to, have that flexibility, stream whenever you want, and like for however long you want. It's really nice, um, and that kind of gets to the communication part of this video. Um, that first part was really more about the executive functioning, and the way in which this would really kind of go with your schedule. So it's really important not just for people with executive functioning deficits. It's also important for, generally speaking, anybody who wants to be a streamer, because the very first thing you need to do is to find out, when are you gonna, do your streams, and how long, and are you gonna, schedule these in advance? Do you need to, like send out a notification beforehand? You know, those all really depend on how you are personally. Charlie doesn't do that, mostly because he's an independent individual, very introverted, when it comes to his choices of content creation. So no surprise there at all, really, that it works that way. But as far as the communication goes, Charlie is actually a very interesting and rational individual about that. Now, of course, Charlie has his personality, you know, you know, weaknesses when it comes to people's opinions. That he has taken a long time to really get over that. Um, it's really the negative feedback. It could go for most anybody, really, but it is really important for Charlie, because negative feedback really gets to him personally, and since his content is entirely personal to him, it really does make a difference to him as a content creator. Could change very well the content that he creates in the future. So negative feedback is really something to look out for when if you're gonna try and think of doing it similarly to Charlie. Um, the way he handles that is, you know, it's through practice, really. I mean, it's not always easy to brush or shrug off, those kinds of things like insults and all that. And honestly, if you're gonna shrug it off altogether, then I mean, it could also be that maybe it hasn't even been read. But we know, probably, or at least anybody watching this who has actually seen Charlie's work, like do his streams and watching him live, probably know he does read his chat, and he does read the vast majority of things like that, like insults or critiques. Um, it's it's also really interesting because Charlie is actually a very popular streamer, and I don't mean that like because it's a fact. Like he's been around for so long that he has a lot of followers. It's also really about taking into consideration that there are so many people watching his stream, and so there's also naturally going to be a lot of people chatting. Um, Now I can say, like from personal experience, I've seen his streams go anywhere between 5,000 people watching to over 75,000 people, um, or above that even. Um, I believe like the greatest amount of people he got was like 81 or 86,000. Um, but those are the most recent breakthroughs in his career. So I mean, this isn't a regular occurrence. The usual average amount for anything is probably about 15,000, I'd say. And even then, it's not always a lot of chatter. If I mean, compared to the amount of people watching, it really doesn't amount to a whole lot all the time. Especially when it's not involving Moist esports events, because people want to spend chatting, rooting for other people, and it's also kind of important that it's not an event because you aren't gonna be watching chat anyway. So Charlie wouldn't be reading feedback, you know, constantly during those events. It's important to really keep track of that, especially people like me who have communication disorders. Kind of want to be very careful to know when or when not to, make comments or critique about Charlie. And I'm sure people watching this know my handle and have seen me make comments that are so like not really like in the right time to be making that comment. Um, you know, it's all really about myth, having that methodical, like I guess linkage between the streamer and you as the viewer. But I'm not really here to talk too much about being a commenter, or like on the viewership side. I'm talking about being as a content creator. Um, so the really nice thing about having the ability to read and review all this feedback with so many viewers is that you're not really missing out on something. Charlie doesn't really miss out on negative feedback, and he responds to it. He's very open about and I guess maybe sometimes he's a little nonchalant about it. Um, it's really kind of not really in his interest to be sensitive of the feelings of the people critiquing him per se. I mean, obviously the critique is nice if it is critique. If it's an insult, then there's my cat Hannah. Yeah. Um, so he's if he's getting insults and he's not really gonna hold back. Um, so I mean, not everybody is like that, and for Charlie specifically, probably took a lot of practice to really be able to do that live. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. So I mean, going about criticism is really important to take it in a healthy manner, especially if you have a communication disorder. Um, it's really you have to really kind of practice that. Um, and so really it's all about having the ability to go and find someone, a content creator, who is really not necessarily exactly like you. Charlie's not exactly like I am, but he could be very similar in the way that I would, want to practice this if I was going to be a streamer, a content creator on Twitch or something similar like that, like Kick. Um, it's also kind of nice to be able to see that at such a high level of participation. It gets you a better idea of what's the worst that can happen, I guess. And so, that's really, I guess, not really something that Charlie takes any particular interest in. Having that high amount of viewers and, like being able to get the most out of it. But it just happens naturally at this point for him, probably. So it's not really like, if you're a content creator, like if I was going to start streaming, I would be a small content creator. I wouldn't get a lot of viewers or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, my cat is doing some crazy stuff right now. But anyway, yeah. So it's really kind of, important to find find that balance when you're small. That way, when things get bigger and everybody starts being part of your community, every kind of personality type that you could possibly encounter, even the ones who insult but sound insulting, but really that's, somehow their personality trait. I mean, you might get those people, and you're gonna have to find a way to handle it if you're gonna grow as a streamer. Um, and so, I mean, yeah, I don't really know if there's anything else that I need to cover specifically. I haven't really gone with the script or anything. So this is really just about, you know, kind of going it over very, you know, gently, just brushing over the basic um, things that, you'd see uh, that's, related to being effective communicator on the stream, and as well as a listener, and getting the executive functioning part of it correct, especially at the beginning stages where you really have to decide for yourself if someone like Charlie, MoistCr1tikal, like if his routine kind of would work for you. I mean, if it doesn't, that's fine. That might also mean that you have someone else in mind that might really be good for you. And I guess one thing that I really forgot to mention here is that Charlie also doesn't really, um, engage in conversation. Like, by that I mean he does respond to conversation, but he doesn't really facilitate conversation as much as maybe other streamers do. Um, and that's important to note here because there are a lot of different personalities out there in the streaming community that will be more engaging with the the chat in a way that it actually directs the chat. In Charlie's case, what ends up happening is that he does what he wants to do. He does his content like the way he wants to do it, and then that's basically it. Like the direction of the chat is in that is that direction like that he picks. So it's really kind of a I guess you could say it's a one-sided deal for the most part, but that's normal for Charlie because he is directing his energy from his introverted side, and that is normal for him. So it does feel a bit one-sided, whereas other people will be more two-sided and really more dual in terms of the like back and forth between the chatters and the streamer, um, and that could be like really about a multitude of different strategies, like maybe political conversations, things that get really crazy. um, you know a lot of those conversations actually end up being like band discussion types on most community chats and stuff like that. So it's really you know um, it takes balls of steel to be able to handle that kind of thing as a streamer. Um, and it could very well be a personality that you know would be good, but if you're like me and have a communication disorder, you know, I I don't know if that would be the kind of personality that you would want to, like kind of imitate, because it could be possible that it would be overwhelming, um, and especially maintaining the flow of a chat is really important. Um, if Charlie wanted to go and do something like that, I mean, the chances are that he wouldn't be able to control it, especially if the amount of viewers he has, and that's super duper important to also be aware of that. Charlie doesn't go out of this element for content. It's, um, I mean, it's obvious enough already. I hope he stays in his element here, and you should do it as well if you're going to be a content creator. Um, it's just that if you're getting anxious or nervous or anything like that, that's maybe the time that you know you might be more likely to accidentally go out of your element in a stream and make a mistake, or something like that. And I mean, these days in the streaming community, mistakes can lead to bans. um, it has happened. Charlie himself posts YouTube videos about that, and um, Charlie does not really get in any positions to make mistakes like that, especially around the content of his videos that he wants to partake in. Like car chases, for instance. There's car chases that could be really popular to some people, but not to Charlie, because this is his content. It's in his realm of imagination here. Um, it's based on like the kind of content that he feels comfortable with, but also is entertaining. And so, I mean, in the context of car chases, like on stream, they could be like a toss violation, in terms of service violation there. If there's blood, guts, or anything that is not you know you just don't see that, um, and want to be like showing that to a wide audience. You could get banned for that. It's really kind of about being in control of what's also not just simply not allowed on the platform. It's really good to know that, because um, like executive functioning deficits can also include the deficit in researching that kind of thing. And so I'm not really here to cover that either. And it's also really difficult to even kind of get into that detail, because I myself am not really familiar with that. But what I can say is that, being a fan of Charlie's content, I can trust in Charlie that he would not make any mistakes like that in relation to terms of service violations, because he makes the effort on his part as a streamer to not make that mistake. So I guess that's really about the parts that I missed out on here. This is really the most raw video I have well, I couldn't really say ever posted here because I only posted one video, but it's, you know, not edited or anything like that. So I mean, it, take 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 this half hour of content to whatever you will. If it is helpful to you, please, you know, thank you. I appreciate you sitting through this. I know it's not easy to listen to the static in this video. In fact, I even have the fan on and my cat. Um, she's making already made a cameo appearance on this video, so you know it's really kind of interesting that my webcam hasn't even started to freeze up or anything like that, I guess. Um, but it hasn't, and so you know without any further content here, thank you, and I hope if you have any comments or maybe like suggestions or anything like that based on the last um, I'd say about 50 minutes of content that you've seen of me, um, please let me know. But I know for my next video, it's gonna be about Charlie's YouTube content, and so it'll be maybe another half an hour, like this, in which I go and just talk about his content. And so yeah, take care. Bye bye.